are here yet again. Welcome back to the Talking in Ovals podcast. Hyatt, we're here for week 2. We did it. We're actually almost a real podcast soon. I think a few more episodes will be considered legit. Hello, everybody. Welcome. It is August 15th of 2022. We are back. We are here. Myself, Alex Cuesta. With me, as always, co-host Dave Hyatt. We're here. We're about to have some fun, talk about the greatest sport on the planet, the most participated sport on the planet, track and field, better known as athletics around the world. Hyatt, what's going on? Obviously, I'm fired up.
Not much, man. I mean, what a great week that we had. You know, we had Monaco. We have a great guest this week, and I'm just pumped.
Yeah. You know, you alluded to the guest. Let's bring him in. We have someone who I was just talking about. I didn't realize that we were actually exactly the same exact years in running. That just goes to show how awful I was in college, considering I was not even sniffing his spandex any which way, which is a gross way to put it. Why did I say it that way? But he is Mike Rutt. He's a former pro runner for the New York, New Jersey Track Club, 4-time All-American at UConn, 6th in the Indoor World Championships in 2012 in the 800 meter, working to become a doctor of physical therapy currently. And I have to say, one of the rare humans that has ran 145 in an 800 meter. Mike, what's going on, my man?
Thank you guys for having me. Alex, I was telling you before the show started that this is my first ever podcast. So I'm excited to be experiencing this with you guys and talking about the sport, that I love, and it's given me so many opportunities. So happy to be here, guys.
Yeah, I promise I won't be talking about sniffing spandex anymore. I was kind of weird. I'm not going to cut that because I'm a weirdo, but it is what it
fine.
is. So,
it's fine.
Listen, runners are weird. If anyone's going to listen to the show, you're going to find out, especially us three, which are, probably were distance runners when we were younger, dropped down into more of the middle stuff as we realized we don't like running that long. And we're just all a bunch of weirdos. That's what we are. And people will find that out real quick. So we're going to jump right in. Hyatt talked about Diamond League, Monaco. We talked a little bit last week about the Diamond League, American Track League, Continental Tour, all the great stuff going on. I kind of shit on the Diamond League a little bit, but here we're going to talk about it because that's what we do. There was an absolute fantastic meet in Monaco. If you watched the Worlds and you thought, maybe you watched the U20 Worlds and thought maybe we're done. No. Diamond League continues to give. We had some amazing results, and we have Mike here. It's really great that we have Mike here because we're going to get to pick his brain about what it's like to stand on the line and go up against some of these people. So first, Mike, I want to ask you real quick. The 1,000 meter, it's a pretty rare race, but Monaco had it, and it was the kind of really great to watch. You had Jake Whiteman going for it. He was going for the world record mark, I believe, and he put on an incredible show. Big names in there. Marco Arap of Canada. Clayton Murphy was there. Bryce Hoppel. It was kind of a who's of that area with 1,500 and 800 meter clashing. What are your experiences running the 1K? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Who do you think has the advantage in that situation between the 15 and 8 guys?
That's such a good distance. To kind of try to compare the two. I mean, it's one of those, I don't feel like there is really one skill set that kind of dominates over the other. I mean, some people might disagree with me, but I love the 1K. I didn't run it very much after college, only a couple of times because, it's not very common on the professional scene. So I thought it was fun. I thought, if I was able to focus on kind of an event range that I think would fit my skill set the most, it would be the 1K to 1200. I thought it was awesome to race. And I've only, like I said, I only did it a few times, but yeah, the race the other day was great. It strung out pretty quick. Just because of the pace that they were trying to set when you have Sawinski leading them out.
Sawinski
it's going to go.
Freak. And
yeah.
Amen.
Yeah, the way, and for Arap to hold on, because he was another pacer, and he said, "I'm just going to finish the race." And man, so do you have a relationship with any of these guys that were on the line still? Did you compete? Because you did. You are in a generation. Both of us could say we were in a generation before this. There's very few, outside of like Centrowitz and maybe Robbie Andrews, kind of still hanging on. Do you know any of these guys? Have you trained her?
No, I mean, I know Sawinski pretty well because he was the same years as me in school. Obviously he was pacing, and then Clayton Murphy, he was kind of coming onto the scene as I was going out. So I think it was 2016 was my last year. And I think that might've been his first year pro, or he was just graduating at that point. I forget exactly, but yeah. So, I haven't had a whole lot of overlap with a lot of them. I've been following a lot of them. I had some interactions with A-Rop, just from seeing him in the NCAA scene.
Yeah.
When I was still coaching, and things like that. But no, not a whole lot. I thought actually the person who surprised me most in that race was actually Hobbs Kessler. I looking back, I didn't see his name. It didn't pop out to me when I was looking at the results. And then when I went back and watched the race, I was like, oh, that's Hobbs. And he ran 2:16. I mean,
that's mixed it up. The thing is, he ran a fast 2:16. Like, that's the one thing that if you're a runner, you understand what a fast and a slow race is. There's a fast and a slow 2:16, and Kess went for it, and he was ballsy in that race. Again, it was a great race. I think it did string out, but when the winning time's 2:13 and the last place is 2:18, everyone's cruising.
That's pretty good.
So Hyatt, do you have what you wanted to talk a little about Grant Fisher? What do you got going on there?
Yeah. I mean, well, first I just want to say having a 1K is amazing. It brought me back to, like the high school and college during the winter season, how you have like the 6 and the 8, and there's always that debate, in the 600, is it the 400 guy or the 800 guy, or in the 1K, is it the 800 guy or the mile guy? So it's just cool that Monaco added that event. I was very impressed with Grant Fisher. I mean, that was in the American record that I wasn't sure was going to be able to go down. I mean, Bernard Lagat's, he's an absolute legend. So just see him and just to run a very solid race and to finish as well as he did, I thought it was a very well deserved American record. And, it's like when you think about the history of American distance runners, like I feel like Grant Fisher's, he's going to put his name right in the mix one day. I remember when I was growing up, it was Bob Kennedy, it was Todd Williams, like those were my guys. I remember watching Bob Kennedy break 13 minutes for the first time in like 1996. And it was like, wow, like how can any American run that fast? But now, I just think that Grant ran great, and it's just great to see, especially after his mishap at the Worlds.
Yeah. Mike, did you have that Bob Kennedy poster I think everyone in our generation had, with him on his knees tying his shoes with the Nike swoosh right next to him?
I actually I wouldn't say I was a fan of running until I got to the college level. It was one of those things where I was doing it because it helped me with soccer, and
so
I think it was, I learned about Prefontaine, maybe it was my junior year in high school, and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. Everybody's watched the movie and things like that. And so I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And then, I had, very, very little interaction with like the professional or like the Olympic level, that is track and field. So when I got to college, that's kind of when I started to really become a fan of the sport. And I had a Prefontaine poster, obviously that, that's one thing you had to do.
Every college distance runner did.
Yeah, exactly. So that was really kind of the extent of, I had Prefontaine and Muhammad Ali. Those are the two posters I remember I had in my college dorm. But yeah, that was kind of it.
That's pretty cool. So a question, and this I'll throw it back to both of you because we both have been following. So Paul Chelimo finished 11th in that race in 7:42. My concern with Chelimo, not necessarily his time and where he finished, he was never a factor in this race. Now, Paul Chelimo has ran fast. He's ran well. He's used to running and competing. Is he a guy that's kind of looking like he's having a little bit of shell shock stepping into the pro level, where some guys can kind of jump in head first? And, and Mike, I know from watching you race and competing, you were a guy that was never afraid to mix it up. Didn't matter the class. If the pack was going out in 50, you were going out in 50 right there up top with them. And, you let the race take it as it was. What do you see when you watch Paul Chelimo race right now? Because I'm seeing a little bit of, I think his fitness is better than his times are kind of going out with right now.
Yeah, I think it's just a different ball game, and I think when he is super fit and he's super confident, that's when you see the Paul Chelimo that we know, that, the one who you see on social media and the one who's right up there, sticking it to the Kenyans and things like that. So I think that was, I don't know if his confidence isn't there right now, or, or maybe he's just kind of in a little bit of a rough patch, or the fact that the race, I know they had said it, I think it was a 7:20 pace, was the goal for that Aragawe had. And, that is fast. Not to say that Chelimo can't hang with someone like that. But I don't know, maybe he just wasn't there that day. And so I'm not entirely sure, but yeah, he hasn't been the same this year, at least that we've kind of seen in the last few years.
I think it's hard to, to have to run so good every single year. I mean, at some point you're just going to have a time or a season where it's just not there. I mean, I don't think that it means anything that he's getting too old or that he has too many races. I think, sometimes we just kind of like I said, you just get in that rut and it's just hard to keep going year after year.
No pun intended.
Yes.
Yeah. It's okay. It's okay. Not the first, won't be the last.
I'm sure he hasn't heard that one yet.
Yeah. I heard it last week, actually. So,
so I'm just as corny as every other middle-aged man talking to you.
That's right.
Dad jokes, man. I got tons of them.
So we'd be remiss to answer. We're a bunch of middle distance guys, but we do have to talk about the 200 that went on with the men there.
Yeah.
Noah Lyles, Arian Knight, and Michael Norman, even, Joseph Fambola, who was the 100 and 200 meter champion in NCAA this year. Josephus Lyles, which is the younger brother of Noah Lyles in the race, is another sub 20 guy. But man, Noah just put it on another level. Michael Norman looked great coming out, shot out of a cannon. But, Knighton ran consistent, not as fast as I think a lot of people wanted to see him run. But Noah Lyles just hit 75 meters left. And when everyone's starting to die down, his race begins. So I'll put it to you this way in a little bit, Mike. What's it like standing next to guys like that on the line? Like when you're sitting there and you're looking and you're like, I know I'm really good at running. I'm really fast. But Jesus Christ, this guy's a freak. Like, what's it like stepping up to the line with those guys and for that 1 second, that mindset of he's really fast. Okay, now I have to beat him, what is it like that?
It's tough. It's a bit surreal. I think there were times in my career where that happened. I remember my first ever US champs. I had to line up with Kadivas Robinson was in my first round heat. David Krummenacher was in my first round heat, and Bernard Lagat that was the year he was coming off of his 1500 world champs. So he actually had a bye to the world champs. But I was standing there and I was like, oh, okay, so this is it, this is the real deal. And I think actually Dwayne Solomon was in our race too.
A young Dwayne Solomon, probably.
He wasn't the Dwayne of 2012, but because I was in 2009. Yeah. So it was definitely interesting. And then a few years later, kind of fast forward to 2012, I got to race in the New York Diamond League and standing up against David Rudisha. That's when he ran the 141. And I remember just like getting off the line and I look up and I'm just like, dude, he's out. He's gone. And it's hard not to see that and to be like realistic and be like, okay, he's the world record holder. And, here I am, I'm in really good shape, like you said. And it's like, I'm coming off of a great indoor season and it's hard not to just be like, all right, well, here we go. And kind of keep your game face on. But yeah, it's one of those things you just have to learn to roll with and get used to.
I'm going to flip it here a little. I mean, I thought we had some great races, women's side to them. And we've been spoiled here in America in the 800 meter, with Ajay and I think, but I mean, 156 and 157. And how about Olivia Baker in third in a 158? I mean, I'm a diehard New Jersey guy, born and raised here, went to Rutgers high school here. Just the fact that you could get a foursome from New Jersey that could win a 4x8 against the rest of the world is pretty fascinating to me. I mean, when your slowest might be Wilson, and not Ajay, I think it's Allie Wilson,
from Monmouth.
And she's sub 2. I mean, just the fact that you can get 4 women who are from New Jersey could have a chance of winning the 4x8 against the rest of the world is just amazing. And
giving a shout out to Allie Wilson because she was the rabbit in the 1500 meter and actually brought them through in 159. Yeah. So it's like she's in great shape. She's been having some great races. Allie, if you ever listen to this, come on the show. But actually anyone here, if you ever listen to this, come on the show. But it was, Monaco was a special night because you also had Faith Kipyegon going after the world record in that race. And, Allie brought her through perfectly in 159, and then Adele Tracy was also there, and it was just such a good race, and Faith just couldn't hold on in the end, but
she just tied up some.
So special. That is
unbelievable.
Such a special talent. Now I have to go back real quick with you, Mike, because I have to ask you, what's it like being on the other side though of, you're the guy in that race. And I'm talking, not even just college, like when you got up to some like pro meets too, and like you're looking at other pros are looking at you and you're the top dog. You're the one everyone's headhunting. And then you go out and you do it. You go out and you dominate a race, you get first. What's that feeling like from start to finish, just being the guy and then doing your job type of deal?
It's definitely, it can be nerve wracking. I think I can look at like my college conference meets. And there were times when I succeeded and failed in that position. And it's one of those things again, kind of, you have to get used to it. You have to be ready for it. And luckily my coaches helped me with that. I think one thing that they did was they never made sure, they made sure that I wasn't ever kind of ahead of myself mentally. And that I was always prepared, and they were always putting me in positions to really test myself. And I think that really helped me a lot. But yeah, when you come away from it and you succeed, it's just so relieving in a sense, because, again, you're fit, you have all of these tools and that you're ready to go, and that, you on paper, at least, you should be able to beat everyone. But we always know what the underdogs can do. We've seen it time and time again. That's what all the movies, come up with. And so, there is a little bit of that doubt. And I think that that's normal. But to come away, successful is just satisfying. You just be like, all right, I did it, or I executed it the way I wanted to, or something like that. But yeah, it can be nerve wracking, at least from my point of view. I don't want to speak for everyone.
I'm sure. And track to me. So, go ahead. Hi, go ahead.
No, I mean, obviously, like never running at that level that you were. I could not imagine. I mean, even in my high school days, I was never like, there's Dave Hyde. He's the one that you have to be. I could not imagine just the pressure that has to be on you. Like, not only for yourself as an individual, but especially in college, like your team's banking on those points.
100%.
So it's just pressure from all sides, and it takes a very strong individual to be able to keep that mindset to just kind of edit out all the noise and just keep going for it. So
yeah, and there are going to be times when, again, when you're able to handle it, and sometimes when it just gets the better of you. And I think that that's part of sport. And for any young listeners out there, or anybody looking to that next step, those are the things you have to deal with, and that's what helps kind of you become a champion. I'm a pretty big golf fan now, and Tony Finau a couple of weeks ago, he talked about how he was a loser so many times, and the loser X amount of times then becomes the champion, or a champion is a loser X number of times. I forget the exact quote, but it was something along those lines, where he talks about how those sorts of situations really kind of helped him become the champion that he was, and how it made it that much more enjoyable once he finally got that first tour victory.
So I want to transition a little, and I want you to kind of go through with us, because, like Dave said, like I said, we are not, couldn't even get to the caliber you imagined to get to as a runner. You were, a very good high school runner, transitioned to a really good collegiate runner, and then transitioned into a really good pro that entered into some rarefied air running a 145, which, again, it's a special, there's a very select group of people that you could say you're a part of running that. And then going from that, going later into your career and kind of being like, this is it. I feel great. I know I'm still good, but it's just not happening anymore. And now I got to, whatever, you went into being a coach. Kind of talk us through what it was like, going from being like good in high school. Okay, I'm now at a Big East school. At UConn was still Big East then.
Yes,
running against really good competition here. And now I'm good enough to be a pro, and I'm good enough to compete in worlds. And now I'm a coach. And kind of give us like a synopsis of how that roller coaster was, your career, I guess.
It was, it was interesting. Yeah. I think that's kind of like the best word I can use to describe it. Coming out of high school, I had always put myself in a situation where I was challenged, whether that was a natural decision on my part or just one that I, just happened to fall into. And when I went to UConn, it was one of those where I came in and I had a bunch of guys that challenged me, and then, that just rose me to the next level. And then, I had success there, went to the next level, and I knew I needed another challenge, and went with NJNY and knew that was going to challenge me even more. And I was fortunate enough to just continue to progress. And then once I got to that point in my career where I almost, I don't want to say I plateaued, but I got to a point where that next step was not as easy as the 20 steps before it. It definitely was tough to deal with, I guess you could say. But it was definitely interesting. It was an awesome ride, and I would never change it for the world to do, what I did the way I did it. Yeah, I mean, it was just, it brings a lot of joy to me to think about what happened and how fortunate I was to get to the point where I was. Because I never thought that I'd be where I was. I never thought I'd be running in college first. I never thought that I'd even think about running after college. I actually thought I was going to go right into the physical therapy world. And that next opportunity opened up. And I was like, oh, this is cool. Like, it was it was so much fun. And then it became a job, and, then things kind of got a little more serious. And if I'm being honest, there was some stress there when it comes to that kind of stuff. And then when you start having, your jumps in success tend to get smaller and smaller and smaller. It can be a little bit tough, but it was awesome. I went out when I should have, I believe. It was a blast.
Question for you. Do you feel that the formation of the American Track League can help prolong the careers of some of the athletes, who might not be at that top tier anymore, who maybe can't afford to go over to Europe to race, having something here in the States, having ESPN show its events. I mean, I personally feel that would be great for someone maybe at the time frame that you were just talking about, to be able to stay here. You don't have to spend travel expenses. You're not sponsored by Nike. It just have a chance to just keep on pursuing that dream.
100%. I think that was definitely tough. While it was incredible to go over to Europe for a month at a time and, live over there, train over there, travel to some incredible places and race in some beautiful places. It was also, we joke about how it was just, I was racing my training partners who I see back in New Jersey. That's where we were training, and I'd be racing them, the next week in Belgium, and you're just like, well, but we spent, a few grand to get over there and things like that. And I think what they're doing is fantastic. Paul Doyle does an incredible job with that. He was actually my one of my agents, my first agent. And I knew that, he would do an awesome job. He's done fantastic, trying to make it more than just a track meet, bring in the fans, whether they'll be local or nationally with the broadcast and things like that. And I think they're doing a fantastic job. There's some incredible performances coming out of there. And a lot of the athletes they're relying on things like incentive bonuses on their contracts to get to that next level, or maybe they're looking to try to hit that world championship standard. And these types of events, they can do that without having to spend thousands of dollars, And so I think that can be super helpful. A weekend trip to Atlanta or, wherever they might be hosting a meet is a lot better, I think, for them in the long run. And you're still getting the same competition, and I think that that's great. And then, in terms of the growing the sport side of things, I think that's good for the U.S. to be able to have some of these meets, because I feel like those are the kinds of things that are going to help the sport to grow in this country.
Yeah, I mean, I was watching one of the events, and they were having a barbecue. They had a band. The only thing that I guess we were talking about last week is, do you feel that it's a detriment that there's not the large track and field stadiums here in America that there are in other countries? Like having these events at a small college or at a high school, it's great for the fans, but do you think that might deter some of the higher level athletes from attending those?
I think it might, to be honest, but I also think that there has to be a starting point. And I think that might be what it is. And maybe they start sprinkling in more bigger venues from there. And I think, I would imagine it's kind of tough too, because when they go to colleges, they got to get the permission from the colleges and things like that. And from my little bit of time in the NCAA system, colleges can be a little bit stingy when it comes to that kind of stuff. I don't want them using our track or our facilities and ruining them and these, those types of things. So that can be tough, but I think that where they're at now is a good spot. I think they're ready. We need to take another half step to get to that next spot. And I obviously don't know what they have in store, but but yeah, I think it's a really good thing. I listened to what, your podcast from last week, and I thought that you guys were right on, with talking about the not having the same athletes at every meet. It's tough for fans to kind of really get engaged when they don't see the same people every week. If you were watching a football game and it was a different starting O-line every single week, you'd be like, well, what exactly am I cheering for, and things like that. Yeah. It's hard to really get behind it that way.
And like Coach said, a guy like you, and at a point in your career when you were starting to run fast, if they would have came to you and said, hey, Mike, for a 6-meet tour around America, we'll pay you $250,000, $300,000 to make sure you would appear at every single meet and compete in every single meet. Would that have been something that you would have been like, yeah, sure, I'll take that and go compete?
250, 300, I would have done that in a heartbeat.
And that's
I would have sold my soul.
And someone with the deep pocket needs to come and do that, because I think that they don't realize that you don't would it be great to get Cindy McLaughlin, Noah Lyles, Raven Rogers to stay home? Yeah, it would be awesome. But is it realistic right now? No, but we can get, some of the guys, you look at the bottom half of the Diamond League, all the events, there's Americans down there that I guarantee would be like, yeah, hell yeah. You pay me whatever, you pay me $150,000. I don't have to go work at the shoe store on the weekends. I can just train. Yeah. I feel like that someone at the deep pocket, or a few guys with deep pockets in the sport. The American Track League is great, but that's why I really think the detriment is we're never going to catch hold, because big track fans are like, oh, okay, is Centrowitz going to be there? No. Okay, is Robbie Andrews going to compete? No. Are we going to get an appearance from Lopez Lamont? I don't think so. It's like, okay, so who's racing? Yeah. And it's not against any of the people that are competing, but they're not necessarily even household names to a lot of track nerds. Yeah. So it's difficult. It's great and difficult at the same time.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And then the other side of it is, with the number of events that we have in our sport, that makes it so challenging too, because you've got, it's like, well, how far is the buck going to spread, for the 10th ranked American in, whatever event. I don't want to start pointing at certain events, but that makes it tough too, because then they're like, hey, I want a piece of the pie. I want to get to that, and kind of where do they fall in it? So and I think that's it seems like a widespread problem we have in track and field in general, just the disparity of, the top versus the middle versus the bottom. And it seems like we haven't found a way to bridge that gap yet, or to make it quote unquote fair for everybody, I guess you could say. I don't like using that word when it comes to that, because I think you kind of, you earn what you get. But I do think that makes it tough. You know what I mean? Because there's not a ton of meets outside of those, the meets that we were just talking about. Yeah. Yeah.
In true track spirit, if you're not winning, you're not getting paid. Well, if you're not, and that's just it. There was no show up. Right. But we could take an example, I guess, from, PGA and things like that, where essentially it's similar to track. A bunch of independent contractors that are really good at the sport.
Yep.
The LIV's kind of screwing that up right now. They're really competing with them and giving them a run, because the LIV is good golf. I don't care what anyone says. I like the LIV, but it's a really tough thing. I just wish, I don't know who has deep pockets in our sport, but I would just wish some of them with deep pockets would kind of get together and be like, let's just make some pseudo teams, contract some really fast athletes, and make a tour. And I guarantee those names will become household names, because Americans just like rooting for people they know are going to be there.
Yeah, exactly. You're going to root for the people that you know, and you're going to be able to connect with. And if you only see them twice a year in the US, it's hard to connect with them, until you see them at the Olympics, and then you're like, rah, 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 every 4 years. Yeah, exactly.
Which is why, I think having ESPN as a partner is huge, because if you don't have Peacock, or you don't know, we don't know when these Diamond League races are for the average fan. I mean, we know, but just the fact that it's easily accessible. You can go to ESPN Plus. You can watch the replay of it. So having them, I feel, could be a huge asset to helping keep this grow.
I agree.
So this definitely helps. Now that it's just not two schlubs saying it, Mike Rutt saying it. So now it needs to happen, because he was
whatever weight I hold,
running, unlike us two. So I want to talk a little bit more about the state of track, because the lower you go now, tiers, you get to the high school level, and Mike, I don't know about you, but it's like, I was a county and conference champion in the 800 my junior year. I don't know if I would have made the finals running a 158. Like, it's incredible what's going on right now. And it's like, I remember, I think when we were going through, what was the milestones? You wanted to break 5, then you wanted to break 450, 445. For the 800, it was, all right, you're a freshman, get you under 205. Then maybe sub 2, and then start working a 155. It's like, okay, now it's like, you're not sub 2, you're garbage. Get off my team. Like, what is going on? What's in the water right now? Because we just had a meet. I think it was in Illinois or Indiana. They had an XC opener. 5 dudes were under 16, and then there were 4 girls under 20 at the opening meet. Like, what do you attribute? What's going on in high school? Like, do you have any idea, like, why these athletes are seeming to be so much faster than we were?
Yeah, I've talked about this with a few of my buddies, just in general, just seeing. I mean, you see what like I think Mo is doing coming out of high school, and
Arian Knighton too,
Arian Knighton, what the boys were doing out in California last year.
4 kids last year, I think, broke 4 minutes. 4
I mean,
high school kids, and like you had 2 kids running 146. You run 2 flat now, you might be in the JV race.
Yeah.
In certain places.
It's, I think in general for the sport, and I feel like you can kind of see it a little bit at the collegiate level too, is the accessibility to what everybody is doing or what everyone has done is
absolutely.
I think that's the biggest contributor to it. And then I also feel like, especially at the collegiate level, you're getting a lot of setup races. I mean, you look at all the BU races, you have the rabbited the first 10 heats of the men's mile, and you're just like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah. I hate that.
But yeah.
The Valentine's ridiculous with that.
Yeah. It's, I mean, it's great to watch if you're just looking for fast times and stuff, but I think it also hurts people later. When it comes to championship season, but that's a whole separate conversation, I guess. I think that's the biggest thing though, is the accessibility. What everyone's doing. You've seen all the workouts that people post and the videos they post, and it's not as much of like, oh, I saw on Track and Field News magazine that Jim Ryan did X, Y, or Z workout in his prime, or you see everybody from different parts of the country. You're seeing the results they're running. How they're running
the NAU workouts.
Everyone's doing,
NAU is epic for their workouts on flow track.
And so it's. I think that's the biggest piece of it, and that's what I would attribute most of it to. Yeah. I think more than anything.
And not to sound old, but I am older than you guys. When I was in high school, there was no internet, so your coach's word was gospel. You did whatever.
Can you say that again?
There was no internet.
When I was in high school, there was no internet. I just think we lost any viewers from the last 30 years.
So towards the end of the year, up to when I graduated, we did have dial-up. But besides that, but I mean, we didn't really know what everyone else was doing. I mean, you could get the newspaper and see like the top 3 in each event, but what your coach said was gospel. So like, there was no way to see what other people were doing, how they were training. I feel like it's become a very copycat type thing in the coaching world, which is not a bad thing at all. Like you find something that works well, and usually it'll work for other people.
A lot of coaches were using the same manual too back in the day. There's still, there's
Jack Daniels running.
Jack Daniels.
It's still the Bible. It's the basis of every good coach still uses that book.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So now, do you think, this is coming to both of you too, do you think we're going to see some peaking going on? Like, we did have 4 guys break 4 minutes, but how often do we see those guys and they really become a Alan Webb, who broke the 4 minutes and continued to have a lot of success as a pro and everything like that? Like, are some kids going too hard, too fast? Are we getting kids to bump up to 70 miles in high school? And, there's some freaks that can do 70, 80 at, the age of 17, 18. But you really shouldn't be doing that until you hit college. Like, that's a lot of stress and strain to put on a kid. Are we seeing, young men and young women going a little bit too hard too soon, and then they're peaking, they're having these great national times? And I don't know, you were, Mike, you were at the collegiate level for a little bit. Are you seeing some guys come in and it's like phenoms, and then we put them through collegiate workouts and they're not really producing the way you want them to? Like, Am I off base?
Yeah,
What do you
I
got?
think you do see that. Obviously limited experience with the coach. It was only 6 years, so I can't say like, oh well, 10 years ago it was different. But you do see that. You do see some programs that do high volume and things like that. But I don't know if it's necessarily going to be an overall negative in the sport. I think you might get some people that perform better than they maybe would have, which then kind of opens up a new opportunity that they might not have ever experienced before or thought about, so that they would then move to that next step and get another kind of more exposure to more training at a next higher level. But then I do think you do see some athletes still going to that next level and taking that next step, which I think is just incredible. I think just seeing whenever I look at some of the collegiates that graduate and they move to the next level and they take that huge next step. I mean, Holly Hort, what he's done, he came out from a great program, not to say that they kill their athletes or overwork them in any way, shape, or form, but in a very short amount of time, he takes a huge next step. And what Ritz has done with that whole group, I mean, you kind of look across the board and they've all really done that. It's just incredible. But so I think that might happen in some cases where some people maybe coming out of high school are overworked and maybe will flame out. But I think that might have happened anyway. But yeah, it's definitely pretty wild to just see. And it's one of those that you just say, I'm glad I'm not in high school anymore.
And you know what? And I have to say, I was put through some pretty tough workouts. You saw some of my workouts toward the, especially junior year when I was running well. Coach Scheffler, who's, the man was a D1 All-American wrestler over at West Virginia and just a student of everything, learned how to become a very good distance coach in a short amount of time. And he's like, all right, you're running well. Let me put you through college workouts. And we had, Dave, we had Ian Hahn at the time who would come down and give us workouts from Penn State and stuff. And it was grueling, but I just don't think I could do what they do right now. Now, I want to close out something. And Dave and I have talked about this in the past, and I want to get your opinion on this. Now, Alberto Salazar is out of the sport, and I think rightfully so. I think everyone is kind of, happy that he has been exposed and is gone. Who knows if he'll come back, because, we are forgiving people if he comes back and he's promises and is watched, I guess but I think there's been a noticeable drop off in quality, especially on the men's side in the world competition stage, where I feel like we had a lot more competitive meets against some of the Kenyans, Ethiopians, and that, especially with like Galen Rupp and stuff. And we had not just him, but we had a lot more of a pack competing against these individuals. And I'm not saying what Alberto Salazar did was good or was right, but are we kind of experiencing a little bit of American shell shock still in terms of how to re-gear and how to retrain in order to get there? Because what everyone would say, the Oregon Project was wildly successful in producing world-class athletes.
Yeah.
So what's the solution to kind of get back there? Because I hate to say it, because I really like a lot of those athletes, but there's been kind of a step back in terms of the level there.
I don't know. That's a good question. Oh man, it's one of those things that the first thing that comes to mind is just like the ebbs and flows, of how our sport is. But that's a really tough question. I can't think. I don't think that I can really come up with a clear answer to that. I think that that's really good. I can't.
The thing is, a lot of people were like, yeah, but he was pushing the boundaries of what was legal. And it's like, that's what a lot of individuals, like, that's not just because he was caught. That's a lot of individuals do that. Like, the legal list is always changing with a lot of those borderline supplements that you can use. And, just elite athletes mess around with that a lot. And it's like, okay, this isn't there. Like, I don't know. I feel like it's a different individual. Some people are just straight up clean. They'll just have some protein and take natural supplements. And other people will mess with that legal limit to get as much as they can out of their body. I don't know what's right or what's wrong. But for me, it's just like, man, I I like seeing the red, white, and blue mix it up. That's just honestly, selfishly, I just want to see us mix it up. I want to see more Americans running up top and winning or not, just being in that pack. Nothing against the Africans that are amazing runners, but damn it, I'm tired of seeing them dominate. Like I really am.
I think we're going to be seeing a good amount.
I'm not sure that, that we could base this on just this 1 year or the season, because like there were certainly some notable Americans that were injured. Centritz was out. Donovan Brazier certainly has the talent too. You just never know if he's going to, which version of him is going to be there, but he's a guy who can definitely fix it up when he's right. So, and then, like I said, you have Grant Fisher, who I felt was ready to place in that World Championships in that 5K, but, he obviously tripped up. So, I mean, plus, it's like we said last week, like there's so many different sports here in America to choose from, whereas other countries, that's their main focus. So you get these kids at these very young age, especially distance running, like it's never been a strong American part of running, like we never really did compete, maybe years ago with like Frank Shorter, but since the Ethiopians and the Kenyans have dominated, you really haven't seen many Americans at that level. You had Rutt for a while, who was there, but so I'm not sure that has anything to do with Salazar. And, I do think, yes, that there are other people who definitely push the boundaries, and maybe it's not as stringent testing where they're from, but I'd like to give it a little more time, a few more years, and see if that is a trend that is going to continue, or if it's maybe just a little blip.
Yeah, I tend to think that it might be a little blip, just a reload of sorts. I'm trying to think of looking at the guys that have come out of the collegiate system lately, and a lot of them have been internationals. Between, all the NAU guys. I mean, Abdi Noor, though, he had a fantastic world championship, meet, and Grant, I think, is only going to continue to get better and better and better and better. And I think is now with the way, I don't know what's going to end up happening with Bowerman and things like that, it'll be interesting to see kind of how that comes full circle. But to see what Cooper Tier can do as he gets a little bit more experience, and Cole Hawker and things like that. I mean, just thinking about it, I forgot that they were also, not, I mean, Cole was didn't make the team, but Cooper was clearly injured, and I guess there were reports that he was injured before World Champs. So I think that we're pretty young, and we're kind of starting to get that next batch coming through. So I'm hoping that we continue to, we get back to where we were a few years ago without doing it illegally. That's definitely my hope, because that bothers me every time I see something like that, because you give so much hope to this next athlete, man or woman, and you're just like, damn, that's frustrating.
I think Marion Jones might have hurt me one of the worst, because I love Marion Jones.
Yeah.
All right, so before we close this out, Hyatt, do you have anything last you want to ask Mike, or say anything at the end of this guy?
Well, I mean, I just wanted to add something really quick there.
Go for it.
I think Mike made a great point. I think Ethan Ritzenheim is becoming what Salazar was, but in a much, cleaner, more honorable way. And
he was always much more liked than Alberto Salazar was too.
But you don't have to like your coach. It's okay to be firm and tough, which I'm sure Ritz is, but he seems to have a lot more. He's more humble, and he just seems, that his athletes really enjoy running for him. I don't foresee a Mary Kane situation coming out of what Ritzenheim is doing. So, so I think he's on that next level of coaches, and he's really going to help guide a lot of guys in. And, I just want to thank Mike, man. It's been an absolute honor having you on this podcast. It's, just your knowledge and just, everything that you bring, if we have you on again, maybe I would love to maybe talk more about, what it was like to transition into coaching and the recruiting process and things like that. But thank you so much.
100%. I'm happy to come on whenever you guys want. It's been a blast. I love talking track, And, my wife gets sick of it after I talk about it too much. After World Champs, a week and a half of me every night looking on my phone, watching the meet, she was just like, okay, are you done? So yeah, no, I love talking track, talking shop. It's a blast. So anytime, I'm more than happy to come back.
I don't know if we gave a shout out on the podcast. We talked about it before the show, though. Emma Coburn, you get a shout out for the way you ran at the 100%. Steeple. We talked about it before the show. I don't know if we mentioned her. And congrats to Elizabeth Bird of Great Britain. You ran a huge PR in that race in 9:07. Yeah. But last question I have for you, Mike, and this is the most important question of the show. You talked about how you don't like the illegal stuff going on. Is training in Colorado a PED?
No, because we have poor man's altitude here in the Northeast. We've got the humidity. The humidity is rough. It is rough.
It is.
So it's rough. So no, I actually think I would take altitude over this humidity stuff. No. Yeah. Don't talk about me when it comes to conversion charts and all those things, because that's a completely different situation. But yeah, no, it's
that's for the next show.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. But again, he is Mike Rutt. He's a former pro from New York, New Jersey Track Club, 4-time All-American at UConn, 6th at the World Indoors in 2012 in the 800. His accolades are fantastic. 145 in the 800 meter. And who knows, one day he might be doing physical therapy for you when you finish up becoming a doctor. So
that's right. Come see me.
You might have an elite athlete working on you, so listen to him. But again, Mike, anything that you want to promote, anything you want to shout out, any social media, anything like that?
No, I just wanted to say, I love what you guys are doing. I think the content that's coming out in general right now for the sport is really good. I think we were kind of in a little bit of a plateau of sorts where we were a bit stale in terms of the content surrounding track and field. So I love this. Just talking track, getting it out there. I think it's awesome, and I think it can really, really help the sport grow. So thank you guys, and keep doing it.
Awesome. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much, Mike. Coach, as always, it's fun having you on. I'd like to thank everybody for listening. Go follow us on Twitter at Talking in Ovals. And if you want to come talk. Let us know. You don't have to be a big runner. You don't have to be Mike Rutt. Come talk to us. And as always, I said it last week, send us your PR. I don't care what it is. I want to talk about your PR at the end of the show. I want to close out every show telling your name and giving a PR, whether it's your son, your daughter, yourself. I don't care if you broke 30 for the first time in a 5K or you broke 5 minutes in the mile. I want to talk about it. I want to give you a shout out because you deserve it, because track is a game of pain. And whether you're running and you're winning or you're losing, 100%, it's the same exact pain as long as you gave it your all. So everyone, really appreciate you listening to the show. Mike, thanks so much for coming on. Hyatt, we'll be back at this next week. See you later, everybody.